Today we have David with us, and I met David through a mutual friend of ours, and I asked for him to come on our podcast and share his journey in life. And David, why don't we just start off first with you just sharing, who you are today, and then we can probably backtrack from there.
Okay. Again, my name is David Dunworth, and we met through a mutual friend, Debbie. And I know Debbie from a couple of different avenues. We've known each other for a while, but through two different organizations. One is a business acceleration group, networking group, and the other is a ministry called King's Counsel and Trust Family Office Ministry. It's a faith-based organization. And that's what I've been working with is FBOs and foundations and NGOs, non-government organizations internationally for the past 3+ years. I, by trade, am a marketer. I retired from the private club industry as an executive, high-level executive with a company for 10+ years. That is the leader in the private club business. There's over 250 clubs at the time when I was working with a company called Club Corp. And during that time, I learned quite a bit about marketing. Went to school in multiple places, focusing on marketing. I'm a direct response copywriter by trade. I had a marketing agency since 2012 until COVID hit. And in February of 2020, I spent 7 days in California we never left the hotel in 7 days. We had all of our meals there, all of our meetings there, all of our free time, and so forth. The hotel happened to have been full, but the majority of the guests in the hotel were Chinese origin, and they all wore masks. So I would see them at breakfast, I'd see them at lunch, I'd see them at dinner. And obviously we all ate from the same buffet lines and that sort of thing. And it struck us as odd. There were 8 of us all together, counting me. And we struck it as odd that, they were what we thought at the time was paranoid, because COVID was just hitting us. Nobody knew anything about it. We thought they were just, being a little bit hyper vigilant or what have you. Well, by the end of that 7-day period on the ride home in the airplane, I became sick. And when I got off the plane, the next day I went to the hospital. They didn't want to take me. They weren't taking any patients who were complaining of the symptoms. So I went to another hospital and they did the same thing. Go home, they said, and take care of yourself. Well, I did that. And after being in bed for 10 weeks, not knowing if I was going to live or die, I was very, very sick. And I had no time to support my marketing agency clients. And so I actually had to let them know that I couldn't do it and that they should find somebody else to help them. And so I shut down the business. And during that time, I had a lot of time to think and to pray. And I'd always been a believer, but I was more focused on the secular world than anything else. But the Lord put it on my heart that I'd been doing a great job, but in the wrong end of things. I needed to focus my attention on others instead of myself. And so I made the decision then, when I was strong enough to go back to work, I would work pro bono with nonprofits, foundations, and ministries, and an NGO that I had been supporting for a couple of years already. And so that's what I did. In May of 2020, the 3rd, 4th week in May, I started seeking places that needed help with messaging, marketing, organization, leadership, those types of things, which is what my bailiwick is. And so I started and have been working with 5 different organizations ever since, 2 are which are ministries, 2 are foundations, and an NGO in Africa. In the NGO in Africa, I had been supporting 2 small villages for quite some time, a couple of years back then, as a sponsor for children to go to school, a couple of kids, and I would send them donations of other kinds and so forth. But coincidentally, in 2001, the foundation founder, her name was Marty Ward, passed away with from cancer. And so I asked the board of directors if they wanted somebody to take her place. They said no, they had already made a decision to close the foundation. You can't do that. I said, that's abandoning those people. Well, we've already made up our mind. Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't just walk on these people because I fell in love with them. I, was communicating with them constantly during the entire time that Marty ran the foundation, because I was sponsoring children and I had to communicate to the pastor to get, money to them and letters and that sort of thing. So we grew a friendship. Well, that was in 2022. No, excuse me, in 2021. And I have been supporting them ever since. Doing God's work is what I call it. And we have managed to save lives, one child at a time. We put them in school because the girls have a tendency to get trapped in and sucked into the sex trafficking, child trafficking thing, because the economy there is pathetic. It's 171 out of 193 countries in terms of earnings per capita. They're dirt poor. The boys, if they're not in school or with the focus on something, they end up going to child labor stuff where they'll work, all day, 7 days a week for maybe $50 a month, if they're fortunate. So my goal was to get as many kids in school and keep them in school as possible. Well, like I said, a few years ago I sponsored 2 kids. I now sponsor 14. And I do that out of my own pocket and with the help of 3 other people who have taken on a child themselves. And so my journey has been one from high-level executive income to living in my car to earning real good income on the rebound to now giving it all away. And the long and short of it is that's my passion. And we are growing a collaboration right now to take over to Uganda all of the services and all of the talent that we need to establish a sustainable economy for a number of small villages over the course of the next 5 to 7 years. They will then be productive, independent, free of pressure and stress, living in a quality environment. And that's what our goal is at this particular point. And I love it. I love what I do.
That's awesome. That sounds really good. I find it how, I don't want to say it's funny, but it's very common that I come across a lot of people where it takes some kind of life-changing event to make a drastic change to go ahead and start doing something else. And like you said, you have passion for it, and now you're just enjoying it. You know what I mean? And that's just what you do. That's your main focus, right? So it's amazing what has to happen to kind of open up your eyes a little bit. And, it's funny how, it winds down that road that you find peace, I guess.
Yeah.
And
and fulfillment, real fulfillment, and it's hard to describe the feeling that I have. But it's one that everybody should embrace. Philanthropy, the word philanthropy really doesn't mean giving money to somebody. That's not philanthropy. Philanthropy is the love of humankind. And so doing for others is a tremendously fulfilling opportunity that provides self-satisfaction and peace in knowing that you're helping somebody else without expecting anything in return. And that's great. They could never, ever provide anything for me other than the love that they feel for me. I talk to the pastor there every day. I talk to my students by letter, a couple of times a month. And the whole village prays for me every single day. It's because I'm their lifeline to their future. And others are beginning to join me in that. And it's funny, I thought for the longest time it was my sole obligation to save these people. And, I had an epiphany one day. I called it the Holy Spirit hitting me upside the head, saying, you know what? You're not supposed to be doing this stuff alone. You need to collaborate with others, get other people to help you. And so that's the past 6 months we've been building a team, and we're just about ready to. In fact, next week we announce our strategic plan and how we're going to kick off next year by going to Uganda. I'll be there in December and January, getting everything ready so that in January the people from the high-tech farming come, wells to dig for water, education systems with coaching, leadership training, infrastructure, building schools, and all of those types of things. We're going to build a medical center in at least one place to start. And if we are successful, we have 4 other locations that will simultaneously be getting the water, the infrastructure, the farming, and those types of things, and the education across the board. And so it's extremely exciting. It's extremely rewarding. And I can't wait to go.
Yeah, I could tell. And so you were an executive and you were probably making some decent money and you went broke and, you went through your story there. But what would you say it felt like to go from that to, in that journey, what I mean? To go from having something to nothing, and now you're giving it away. I mean, can you just share a little bit more about
Well,
that? Like,
sure. I came from a very disrupted childhood. 8 kids in our family. My father was a policeman, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun growing up. It was very, very stressful, very violent in terms of psychological and physical abuse. And so I got out of there when I was 19, went into the military, and I was in the military for almost 8 years. That's where I learned the trade of club management. I was actually a sergeant running an officers club. By the time I left after 8 years, nearly 8 years, I was running multi-million-dollar organizations, earning $660 a month. Now, this was a long time ago, obviously, but
yeah.
The military still doesn't make not too much more than that. But anyway, I got out into the private club field and I could not fail. I got more and more responsibility. I ran the largest club out of 250 clubs of this company, Club Corp, as I mentioned before. I ran the largest club. I had the highest membership. I generated the most net profit. I couldn't fail. It was owned by Ford Motor Company. And so I had 2 bosses. I had Club Corp and I had Ford. And, balancing that was in itself, but I always had some outlet to help others with. I was on boards of directors. I was on the Chamber of Commerce board. I was on the Restaurant Association board, mental health center, those kinds of things. So I always had my hand in giving things, but I was so focused on making money that was my sin. I turned my back on God to generate wealth. And I became very, very, very wealthy. In fact, I got into the real estate investment arena when Dallas and Houston went bankrupt in 1989 and 1990 due to the savings and loan scandal. And properties were being given away out there. So we were buying properties up and down the street. Everywhere you go, we were buying them. And the people that I worked with, the managing director of the syndicate, it was a syndicate that we formed, took all the properties and all the cash offshore, and that's how we went broke. We lost over $4 million in assets. And so we sued him. We didn't get much of anything. And that's how I went from hero to zero. I spent a good long time trying to figure out what went wrong until it finally dawned on me that what I had done wrong is putting physical, earthly things in front of the Lord. And so I changed and started all over again from scratch and just kept going. And over time, things got better, but I really never really lost the passion of helping others. And so when that COVID incident practically killed me, it brought me home to where the Lord was speaking to me in plain English, saying, yeah, you're climbing the corporate ladder, but it's on somebody else's building. You need to work in my orchard for a while. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. And it's been the most fulfilling part of my entire life. Now, as you can see, I haven't missed a single meal. I'm a big guy, but I have only earned $250 in the last 3.5 years. And that's only because I did somebody a favor and they refused to let me do it for free. So I said, okay, instead of $2,500, how about $250? Deal. That's it. And, God provides. And I have nothing but joy in my heart for the people that I'm helping. I have joy with all the people that I'm associated with because we're all focused in that direction. And if I can give a word of advice to anybody, it would be pay attention to what you're passionate about, because if you're passionate about money, that's your God. If you're passionate about sex, that's your God. If you're passionate about laziness, that's your God. And is that God going to save you? So my advice is give away what you cannot keep and gain what you can never lose. Those are the words that I live by.
That's good. I like it. So we'll just go back. We'll go back to the kids and stuff you're helping out. Do you hear from them at all, or?
Yeah, I do. I get letters because they're all in schools, and most of the kids that I sponsor are in either secondary school, like high school. We even have a couple of 8 kids that are in college, and so they live in a hostel right at the school, so they get food, clothing, shelter, medical care, everything, and we just supply it for them. And that's the pastor intercedes for me and giving letters, sending letters, that sort of thing. So he's on the road to the different schools that we have our kids at. And I hear from them a lot, get pictures from time to time, some videos, things like that. Yeah. Good. It's great.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I know you kind of described how, the kids, they go into sex trafficking and other bad areas, right? What is it like they're living? I mean, you said a village, so I mean, I don't know. Do they have running water and stuff like that, or?
Well, those are some good questions. I'll try and describe it as best as I am aware. There's no pavement; it's all dirt everywhere. There is a little bit of farming. Each family or kids with guardians, some of these kids are orphaned and are taken care of by an adult guardian. But they all have a little patch that they can grow some food on. But most of what they eat is rice and some vegetables. Very, very infrequently they get meat. we try to, I try to send on the holidays, I'll send enough the whole village to have a celebration dinner with something they don't usually get, and the pastor takes care of that stuff. But the school is a one-room school building. The teachers are volunteers. There are no paid staff anywhere there because I can't afford to do it, but they volunteer out of their hearts. They have cottage industry things. Now, my village makes blackboard chalk. They also make hand cream, or I should call it lotion, actually. And then they also make liquid soap, and they sell that, what they don't use, to other villages. And each one of the little villages in their area has a different cottage trade. So they kind of barter and swap and, buy and sell what they can to get the necessary things that they need. But the average income for the typical Ugandan is about $100 a month. Middle class makes about $1,000 a month, if you were to equate it in dollars and cents. But for the average student, it takes to feed them, clothe them, house them, and treat them with basic medical needs is $50 a month. And that just gets by with the basics. Anything more than that, is an extra. So we're constantly looking to help them by finding new donors or sponsors. And as I said, the last 6 months, we've been putting a collaboration together, and we're about to go into major fundraising that can change lives. In fact, Friday, I had with a woman who runs an organization that had, in the years past when Marty Ward was alive, they supported the foundation. But when she heard that I was carrying the ball, she reached out and said, "Hey, we want to talk. We want to see about helping you carry on Marty's work." And so I'm looking forward to that, because, that could mean a great bit of difference for the kids. There's to having another steadily donated amount of money every month to take care of some of the needs that fall through the cracks. Like the pastor's mother this past year, the pastor's mother and one of the little kids, little girls, were in the hospital. His mother had malaria, and the little girl had an appendectomy. So she had a little surgery to take her appendix out, and they didn't have any money to get out of the hospital. And so they won't discharge you until you pay the hospital bill. Now, it's not a lot of money, but when you don't have any money, it's like a mountain of money. And so I asked, well, what do they do with the patients if they can't pay? And he said they make them sweep floors, clean toilets, do all of that stuff until they're released by paying the bill. So, Mr. David, can you help us? Absolutely. Here we go. Let's find some money for you. That kind of thing. We had a couple of people graduate from college this past year. Just 2 weeks ago, we had one young man who was in the system, in our system, and carrying college certificate program, a 2-year program for medical records management. And now he wants to continue his education to go on to medical school. Well, it's one of the goals is to get, his name is Sanye Roger, to keep going into school. But medical school is a whole nother amount of money than, a primary or secondary school. So that's a bit of a challenge. It'll take us a while to get there. Yeah. But we also had another woman who is opening up her own hardware store. She graduated last year, and she's opening up her own hardware store. And it's a true success story. It's great because her mother is a widow. She also is a guardian for another student who's much younger. She's in our primary school right now. But Janet's family is extremely proud of her, and we are too. It's just amazing what we can do with a little bit of love, a little bit of money, and a lot of prayer. So
Yeah.
really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, they're great stories. I was going to ask actually if the kids that you are helping out eventually do like turn around and kind of come back and help out the other kids that are going through the same thing.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right. Some of the volunteers in the village have gone to school, are now, being student teachers and assisting the uh, local community with a variety of stuff. I sponsor one little girl, her name is Brenda, who's a senior in high school now. She wants to go to nursing school. So when she's now in school, she's taking care of, basic Band-Aid here, take a couple of aspirin there, that kind of stuff, helping out um, because she appreciates what God has done for her. So she's right there willing to help and do whatever is necessary. So it's a to see what's going on.
Yeah. So I know you have a lot of faith in God and it helps carry you to take care of these children and everything like that. Is there anything else like maybe day to day that you kind of have a routine or something you do to kind of just keep on trucking? Because I know you said you don't have a lot of money and you're everything, whatever is coming your way, you're giving it away. You know what I mean? So besides faith, what keeps you going and stay positive? And I know you're helping out the kids.
Yeah. Well, I live in a community of retirees and we all have our little patch and we do stuff for each other. We get and hang out every now and again. We play cards once a week during the winter time when the snowbirds, I live in Florida, so when the snowbirds from up north come down for the winter, we have a lot of activities that we do. We get together for little dinners. We put little, what do you call it? BYOBs, bring a covered dish type of thing together and just general camaraderie. But I read a lot, I write a lot, and that's what keeps me going. Those are my three joys:
Yeah.
is working with the kids and reading and writing.
Can I ask what you mostly write about?
Sure. I'm an author of 6 books. I'm an international best-selling author from one of them, but I get the title anyhow.
That's right.
And I used to speak a lot. I don't speak anymore, but I write on marketing and leadership. And right now I'm working on a devotional, but that won't be ready for a couple of years probably because it's a very slow process for me to do that. But I'm active with, like I said, 5 different organizations. So that keeps me busy with meetings and board meetings and committee meetings and do this job, do that job type of thing. So with one of the foundations that I help out, I'm on their board and we just finished our branding book. It's 6 weeks of pulling together all of our branding, everything from our philosophy and character to how we write, what our colors are, what our logos are, what the stories behind all of those things are and stuff like that. So it's a real labor of love for me, but that's just, that's how I stay busy. That's how I do stuff. It's all for somebody else. So I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and I can feel it from you. Yeah, I know we're through a computer screen here, but I could feel it. You got that vibe. The energy where you just are happy doing exactly what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like a way, people listening to this that they could reach out to you or the organization or something to kind of connect and maybe they can help out in some way?
Well, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
My name is David J. Dunworth, and there's 2 David J. Dunworths in the world. And we both came from Chicago, but I've never met the other one. And somehow we're related. I don't know how, because there's not too many of us in the world. There's only a couple hundred Dunworths in the world. So somehow we're related, probably a rogue uncle or something from ages past. But you can find me on LinkedIn. My email is my name, davidjdunworth@gmail.com. And we have a landing page that receives donations at tag4 change, TAG, the number 4, change.org. And if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll share some information about what's going on and how they might be able to take a part in what we're up to.
It's great. Yeah, I commend you for doing what you're doing and the journey you had to go through to get to where you are, and find peace and happiness and joy. But yeah, so I have a question that I ask everybody,
Sure.
and I have a feeling I already know some of it, but what are the 3 big things that you've learned and used along your journey?
Three things I focused mostly on that I wish would have changed early was pay more attention to what you're doing for others, not yourself.
Mhm.
Because, we're going out of this world the way we came in with absolutely nothing. So pay more attention to what you're doing to others than you are for yourself. The other thing would be if you have a passion, whatever it is, if your passion is motorcycles, then be the best motorcycle driver you ever were. But remember where the skill really comes from. It's not from you. That's a gift you're given. And the third thing has to do with gifts in general. Find out what your gifts really are and put them into service for others. You'll get more rewards than you'll ever imagine. And you know what? The money comes by itself. It automatically just happens. What you give into the universe. So if you give evil, you're going to get evil. If you give love, love comes back. So that's what I'd say.
That's awesome.
I hope that helps.
That helps out a lot. I'm sure. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad we were able to connect through Debbie, our mutual friend. This has been really good, and yeah, keep going. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Good day.
To